Uh, so, absolutely perfect. Also, it didn't lag for some reason. Amazing. Utterly amazing. Yes, that's my response to this event. Okay, it works. Yeah. Am I don't know. I don't think there is anything to really say about it. Uh, let's, let's see for like 2 minutes if it works. If it doesn't lag, we are good to go to it, I guess. So, in the meanwhile, so I have also a candy. I can probably eat a candy that's like not banned, you know? No, no. I finally realized what was missing. I didn't change the thing here. I didn't change anything. Actually, I'm so wow. So it is that's done. And what else? What else am I missing, bro? Do you not ever ask yourself that? What's that one part of the puzzle that is lacking right now? That if I have, it will make it finally work. Is that the word? I don't think so. Anyway, let me transform this. Reset, transform. Oh, now I have to actually make it bigger. It's so tiny. Wow. Okay, there we are. So, anyways, uh, next question. What am I missing yet again? I assume, yeah, we are probably on to do this actually. It's so crazy. Also, yeah, I think I should probably restart the mic. It seems to be not working properly, not normally. So I don't know about that. I think it's going to be a problem. Most certainly, anyway. Doesn't matter. Okay, it's it has been reset. How do you say that? I know it has a conjugation, but you can say like reset it or something like that. Anyways, the point is it's working, so that's enough. So, uh, what was yeah, yeah. I realized I was writing something else, and I also forgot like going slowly, trying to. I don't think the proper word is figuring things out, but rather just apply to the act of trying to get things, I wouldn't say exactly going, but in their proper place. That's a more proper definition in itself. So yeah, um, let me get this, and after that, we are going to be properly here, yes. Also, yeah, it was more than anything else as always. It's a good enough custom to try to pay attention to things like, oh yeah, is the audio? I think it's, I don't think about it. It's kind of annoying to see that it also requires like some kind of action that I cannot really, I cannot properly, yeah, point out in terms of, I don't know. Is it us having, also, why did they, ah, I, I finally realized why, no, it didn't die. Did it die? Did it not die? What's up with this? Uh, it's using the mic, supposedly. It seems to be using the mic. So, why is it not picking it up now then? If it is using it, sort of. Um, Test? No, it's. Is it working? Is it not working? Why is the Gaso not working? I guess I will. You know what? The easiest solution is always you close it, you open it up again, and it works. We're going to do the same thing here. Yeah, there it is. There it is. There it is. Now, here we are. Uh, wow. What a what an amazing entrance. I don't know. Anyways, good evening. I'm already getting tired of not having a sound behind myself, so we're going to be here for a long time, I guess. Better to have something in the background making noise than to just have absolutely nothing else. But anyways, good evening. It has been a while. How long since the last time that we actually were here? No idea. Not long enough, or more than long enough. Always in that superposition state of, oh yeah, truly not long enough, but at the same time, truly just the right amount to justify getting to be here once again. So, here we are. Good evening. It's this time, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. Novara, so that's also surprising. But I wouldn't say that. I don't know. Will I say anything? It's understandable also. We cannot really lose ourselves too much in that absence, lack, whatever it is. The reality is we get to be here anyway, so that's at least the beginning of something, the start of something, an initial piece in the puzzle, something. It's something. And that's good enough, probably. But yeah, I don't know. I only have like two main things to talk about, and I think they are not truly all that complicated. So I am trying to see how we can approach today in a more proper way. I guess. Also, yeah, the microphone is sort of not so loud. Am I doing something wrong? Me? It seems to be. Yeah, I am not. Yeah, once again, this thing of having to enunciate our words and whatnot that I kinda forget to do myself. Anyways, the point is, here we are. Welcome. I don't know. I have been learning. Let's start with something, brother. Have been learning. It has been quite a long process. It's not even something that we can actually point towards just one lesson because it's to some degree something that is comprised out of everything else, so to speak. This this idea or this thing of mourning, it has been quite an interesting challenge to talk about in terms of where it comes where it appears, where it finds itself manifested. This sort of discussion, sort of conversation, sort of mode of appreciating things and whatnot. So we end up here trying to talk about it, trying to point towards where is it that in itself that comes, but at the same time it's also complicated to do that. It's a lesson that we always have present throughout most of our culture, something that I remember having sort of talked about it recently. It's interesting to see that, yeah, one of the most foundational stories that any kind of mythology or whatnot utilizes is these different explanations for what is stuff like loss, death, the aspect of, I assume, yeah, not existing anymore, and how all of that is also associated with this secondary aspect that has to deal a little bit more with the living, that is the mourning of people and the mourning of stuff. I think it's, in a certain sense, that's the most important thing. Good evening, Andy. Welcome. Today, I hope you are well today. But yeah, it is just that it's trying to talk about actually stuff like, I guess, mourning and whatnot in that sense, yeah. And beginning with unavoidably how it is easily found everywhere. I don't think we don't talk about it at all. We actually have that present in many cases, and it's sort of surprising to see how much we seem to always have an interest in not directly discussing it, but rather demonstrating that we are on the same page in terms of how we all have learned to deal with the process itself of yeah, mourning stuff. That's that's another interesting part of that we even treat people who we have around us based on things around this concept itself of, oh yeah, this person maybe not imitates but possesses a similar enough model of mourning to my own, therefore they possess a little bit more value. They are a little bit more in alignment with what I think, and all of that is in itself uh, an event that doesn't get, I guess, truly observed. Let's say it's it's a commonality, even how much we are capable of, in many cases, deciding stuff just based on that and not much more. Even if we have other modes of associating and whatnot, it's one of the most foundational discussions and ideas that we have to settle in to keep on dealing with everything else in terms of existence, because that's the complicated thing. What I was trying to say also was we don't talk about, I guess, mourning just as in, oh yeah, something dies and something passes out. There is this whole process of separation from things, distancing from events from other people, I guess, from staff. And all of that also is related to mourning, and it's interesting to see. We don't really try to find anything in how we think about the way in which we in itself mourn, but we easily make assumptions, decide, look at stuff and say, yeah, this is in itself a good enough model for me and for the way in which I operate. And this, because I don't need to have much more going on, allows me to be, let's say, not exactly happy, but rather content or capable of not feeling bad. Morning things allows me to not have issues with the rest of the world. And that is in itself a very basic statement, not something highly surprising. I don't think we are talking about crazy things. It's not something very amazing or anything like that. That yeah, depending on how we tend to associate with stuff, depending on how we find ourselves interested in assuming, discussing, observing the moods in which we mourn, that we can also realize that, yeah, to some degree, we also have that layer of wow. And here we are dealing with everything else because we have freed ourselves from the act of mourning. That's in the present moment. That's the most basic thing that we can state. Might be correct. But also, it's not completely true. Sadly, that's where I was trying to go with, yeah. Something incredible, even of this modern world, is so many modes of processing and dealing with information. I wouldn't say information, that reduces the act of understanding that, yeah, mourning might as well be something that is associated with the emotional side of existence, and the possibility of discussing what it feels to have sensations and how certain experiences or certain ideas makes one sit in discomfort. Most exactly, sit in discomfort, not just be, but rather, mourning is to allow the process of removing the discomforts from the way in which we are alive, in a way in which we can end up finding any sort of satisfaction. Supposedly, that's the basis in which we seem to be operating the most. There are also other cases in which that seems to not be at all what reigns. We don't actually care that much in some occasions. We don't actually have an aspiration or a necessity to mourn stuff, so it becomes very funny to see that, yeah, to some degree, it can even become an issue that, yeah, we don't stop, we don't contemplate things, so there might be bad, those are already classified as discomforting events, experiences, whatever it is that brings discomfort that we have not yet processed. That's what I was trying to also say when I refer to it as processing. It sort of is unheartful, very, I will say, very dishonest to just call it, oh yeah, processing. But on the other hand, I mean, it's truly not something so outlandish, not so surprising. It's just that yeah, we have we have sensations, undoubtedly every I guess every living being, if you want a very general statement, has to sense the world, also the human. One of the surprising parts of that is that, yeah, also, we find ourselves in places like this one where we can try to observe what it is to have the capacity to do so, the capacity to make sense. Let's say, if processing sounds too bad, make sense out of the events that might happen, already happened, are happening, could happen, might have happened, might be happening. All of those things in coordination with one another that makes in itself the final part of, yeah, we have we have an existence which is, I wouldn't say predicated on mourning. I have been trying to define it a little bit more, and I wouldn't say that we are mourning machines, as it could be said otherwise. I think I remember I have read something like that. I don't exactly remember where, but yeah, it's the world, or being alive is the eternal process of mourning everything that there was. I I can understand from where that comes from, but at the same time, it is not fully true that we work like that, that we operate on that level. Something funny that happens is we ourselves also have a certain degree of freedom in terms of, wow, we are not actually obliged to just feel bad or struggle against the bad sensations of being alive and nothing else. We also have other aspects of life that are more related to, well, yeah, I also have things that I wish to do, things that I want to do, things that I look forward to doing. That is, I wouldn't say exactly just morning. It does depend, it does play an important role in terms of, wow, sadly, we are talking about something incredibly weird. Not for just no reason at all, but rather due to how we seem to be so capable of making it look like such a natural thing that in some cases, yeah, pleasure can be just another way of mourning everything else. It can fall under the category of things that we experience to sort of soothe ourselves from the problems of life. It's there is a mode of describing it along the lines of how all the good experiences that we might go through in life are just there to provide not much more than, I guess, a basic level of happiness. No matter, yeah, yeah, it's good. Don't worry. It's also welcome soon. I hope you're well. It's it's fine. It can happen, I guess. We can, I can, we, I. It is still possible to drink. That's the point. That's the point. Don't worry. Even in the solitude of existence, it is possible to drink, you know. Uh, it is still, I wouldn't say something comforting. That's maybe too much of a vice or a viceful way to conceive alcohol, perhaps, but it's something interesting. So, yeah. Ah, how am I? I is fine, yeah. I I must say, as always, it's one of those days in which not much else is going on. I have already done my good piece of studying, so I should not be killing myself with studying even more. At some point, you start to forget stuff if you try to cram way too much information. So I already did my part. Even worse, what the fuck are you saying? What are you saying? School, you don't understand it. No, yeah, probably. We have like 150, but at the same time, I already put like 400. It was, I don't know, how I spent like 10 or 20 hours. It's so funny. Ah, I is the chat. We alright. What are you saying? You're testing the emotes. Anyway, but yeah, I'm fine. So yeah, we today it's just trying to not lose it. I guess that whole ordeal of also having a natural schedule to follow. That's something complicated. That oh yeah, today I am going to go early to bed. It doesn't work, man. I can get in my bed. It won't work. I wonder if we can make a full sentence entirely out of emotes. Most certainly, I tried to replace enough words. There are like 5 or 6 combinations that you can make of like average sentences. Not that I know which ones they are, but I know it is possible based on the amount of words itself. That's that's how I know it. It's like yeah, there are enough given combinations possible available to us so that we might find which ones. But yeah, something along those lines. Good luck trying, I guess. Good luck trying to see through all the fucking emotes to identify which ones can be utilized in any understandable sentence. But yeah, I was, I don't know. Let me, let me actually read something. You know, let me. It's it's completely fine, brother. Also, I was thinking about it. This thing is like incredibly weak compared to a proper beverage. It has like 11% less. Anyways, we were on trying to slowly get to a definition of morning. Why are we even talking about this? It's sort of puzzling enough. But yeah, we're talking about that basically. Morning and all of that experience and how it's interesting to see how it works, how it tends to operate in 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 the normal life of anybody. I guess how it's something once again. It's filler word, but it's complicated to properly discuss it. It's something that we all do to some degree. The issue is we cannot truly identify it as such, not because it does not exist, but rather because in some cases it even possesses a negative connotation. So you cannot say, oh yeah, I am mourning stuff. I am going through sensations. I am trying to handle the way in which I feel about things. So just due to that taboo, uh, that in itself is very puzzling. And yeah, I can admit it's comforting enough. I guess good enough to keep it simple. Also now trying to drown myself so much in my own voice instead of what it used to be before. So trying to keep it close to the clock sound also works. But yeah, but it's in a way, it's just the part that matters is getting to understand that yeah, we all in some way, shape or form, process stuff, gets to understand it, and depending on even the tradition that we might follow, it gets to possess a negative connotation or not. But it's not such a negative thing in itself. It's we might be reducing to just a semantic game to some degree, but even while being infants, we go through the process of mourning existence itself, in the sense of making sense out of the world in which we are thrown into, you know? Mourning is just accepting stuff, it's just dealing with this idea of dealing with the facts, dealing with reality, having to confront things. That's mourning. It's not something so absurd or revolutionary in any form. It's a lot more obvious thing, and when it happens, no matter for which reason is it that it happens, when it happens, we get to also find ourselves slowly being more in contact with reality, I will say. Something very funny that happens is mourning can become a negative action to perform depending on the context of the culture in which we live. There is a good mode to refer to mourning in itself as the thing which only the ill persons perform or do or whatnot. And I am not trying to go to that direction exactly. It's unavoidably necessary to have stuff of that sort that allows anybody to feel things to some degree, even if it sounds unfair on the definitions themselves, even if we have to stretch the terms to the absolute limits of their actual definitions just to make them barely coherent, it is still the reality that to some degree, getting to feel stuff and getting to experience the world in a mode of actually trying, once again, trying to see it for what it is an act of will. Not going to lose ourselves too much into definitions of will or whatnot. It's just an act of a willful action. Different mode, same idea. A willful action performed by a willful mind in itself. It's not so surprising then that yeah, mourning to mourn, or if we want to mourn, we must actually pursue that ourselves. That's what I'm trying to go for. If we're actually trying to feel things, we cannot avoid them. It's the unavoidable reality of yeah. There are ideas that I want to talk about. But if I want to talk about them, I have to realize which ones I am actually willing to talk about. And if I have to recognize that, I also have to identify which ones are the most meaningless ones for me. I will take a direction out of my willfulness and I will lead my experience towards that side. But if I don't do that, I might never progress in any other way. I can. That's the trap of just the very limited example. Unavoidably, an average person doesn't have to mourn anything. We are not obliged, once again, we are not enforced to do so. One of the many fantastical consequences of living in the modern world is we have not so many impositions, so many obligations to fulfill, and so many things to do, to actually unavoidably do. So it becomes quite funny to see that, yeah, we actually have to talk about mourning as something that is optional. Thus, what happens is also we don't have to confront things. To confront is basically to mourn. To mourn is to process, to make sense out of stuff, to be capable of giving it the proper. I wouldn't just describe it as emotional side. Oh wow, yeah, we are just being very emotional and we are just being very connected with our feelings. It's not exactly that. In the present day, we can even utilize those descriptions as something negative. It's wonderful to see how much we can utilize those as something destructive. Oh yeah, you know what? We are here mourning something. Thus, everybody's doing bad. Mourning can in itself just be a natural part of existence. Something that we unavoidably go through every single day. It's once again, in the bigger scheme of things, we could even say that mourning is just trying to fit more stuff into the already created picture that we possess about the world. Getting to slowly change the scheme in which we see the rest of things. Mourning is not just the bad things, the bad days in which, oh wow, yeah, today I am going to mourn. That's a different story. That's a different narration. And I personally do not buy it. I do not think it is that useful. It's just like, I don't know. There are way too many examples of that sort. Things that get reduced to the absurd level. To say, oh yeah, this thing doesn't actually possess any value. Why? Because I am fucking making a straw man out of it. That's why it doesn't possess any value. Oh yeah, you want to play video games? So, you're saying that you just want to keep your hands and mind busy from reality? No, I didn't say that, brother. I'm not talking about the morning because I want to feel bad. That's not the point. That's not exactly where I am trying to go. That's a completely different direction. And the way in which many of those things get talked out in the modern sense, in the daily life scene, makes it so that we cannot even properly address them. Why? That's what I was trying to go. Stuff like mourning, stuff like having to confront the bad side of life, let's say. Let's assume that maybe it is about, yeah, having to be aware, to come into contact with things that might not feel good. The earlier given definition is just with anything that might be displeasing, discomforting to any level. That is in itself, to have to deal, to struggle against that is to mourn at any level. Now, the proposition stops being so empty when it gets also identified that, yeah, it's not just, once again, what I realize here, a bad feeling, a bad sensation. It's not about that. That's just dwelling on the past. That's just staying on the same page and never progressing. That's different from mourning. Even if we are sticking to the most basic definition, mourning does not possess that one meaning and nothing else of, yeah, I am mourning, therefore I am in my worst state ever. Based on the culture, unavoidably there are places in which the process of mourning can be seen as one of the most ecstatic moments in a human's life. The act of having to depart from something that is gone, from something that is lost, and to make amends with that event which is in some way final is something nice and is something positive. Once again, depending on the culture, here we can make it look like, yeah, yeah, well, we have to mourn stuff. It's time to be fucking sad. We are talking about mourning, therefore we are talking about the worst state of depression that any human being can go through. That's something funny. How unavoidably interrupting the culture in which we inhabit, we find ourselves to be. We don't get to talk about sensations or feelings without having that other discourse intervening what we are saying. We can make it up, but we won't actually follow what is being said. We can try to make it look like mourning is the most positive action to partake in, let's say. But if the culture itself threatens our existence, we can as easily switch back to something more, far more dangerous. And in those cases, it's sort of a mystery how we're capable of reaching that state, how we can never truly do what we want. We could identify, once again, trying to continue with what has been said. Mourning in itself can be just the action of processing things. Okay, or confronting the reality which appears in front of us that might not be as good, as positive, as happy as we thought that it was before. All of that is wonderful, but in reality, if in our current world what we see is that mourning is just a process through which people get to feel bad, nothing else, we are not going to make a change in the way in which we perceive that. And even if we try, if where we end up, unavoidably is in that older filiation of, oh wow, yeah, I am now having to become responsible for my sensations. I am having to slowly talk about bad things. And I am slowly having to gaze upon the void. That's the easiest expression always for all of this stuff. But when I do that, I also find myself engulfed in something far greater than me and far much more powerful than what I ever will be. So I cannot actually solve it. So no matter how much I try to say it differently, I can struggle my whole existence to say it in a different way. But the sensation is still the same. And at that step, it becomes still another barrier for us to actually modify the action taken, the mode of performing the action, I assume. And I will say it's not something bad, it's not something truly chaotic or negative, it's just part of what we are. That, yeah, we have things that we need to spend some time feeling, and we have things that require some thought. We can actually try to do that and feel a little bit better. We can also find that when we try to do that, not only do we get pushback from the outside, but also we only are in a worse position after having tried. It's this idea of to mourn something, you also have to be willing to expose again the same old scar, wound that was created by the thing which damaged you, so to speak. You cannot mourn something if you're not exposing yourself to that bad sensation. We can do more, far more limited, far less honest mornings if I just stay at the outer level, at the most superficial level. Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm not going to be talking about the things that make me feel sad anymore. That's how I will mourn things. My mode of mourning is to just ignore anything that has been bad and move ahead. That is my perfect mode of existence, and that is my perfect affiliation with reality that I can utilize and not feel bad when doing so. And it's not completely wrong, it's not exactly wrong, it's somewhat true that, yeah, we can do that. That might as well be mourning, but also it might not lead to as many results as we want, and it might not lead to as many positive, happy things as we want. It's this. I don't know. I said it before. I cannot fully be capable of trusting my own words, but perhaps it's also comprised with the action of getting to mourn our own existence to some degree, to see that also in some cases the negative actions that we take in respect to the things that we might want to do or not, and the modes of hurting ourselves when we try to do things that we say that we like, or when we are just implying that we don't even know what we like. In the process of being, when we start to so rapidly limit what we get to be for the sake of avoiding an uncertain thing which we cannot directly point out, but we can at least be sure that we are capable of avoiding by doing that. We can, yeah, that's probably a mode of having analyzed, understood, and integrated how we are going to be. In itself, I don't think it is that much of a radical statement. Yeah, that is something that only comes through the process of mourning things at that time. also. And when that happens, another funny thing also happens into this. But the doors are still always open. Many things are still on the table for us to keep on discussing. That's the endless trap of mourning, unavoidably. I guess, okay, let's say it like this. Modernity did have one correct statement about all of this issue. That is, everything can be mourned. Therefore, to some degree, it becomes negative to try to talk about mourning if the reality is that, oh, yeah, yeah, we're going to be literally mourning every single day of our life. We're going to be feeling things, feeling good, bad, in any way, shape, or form. All existence. That's what we are going to be doing. That's all that we are going to have, and nothing else. I'm not exactly complaining in terms of, oh, well, yeah, this is the worst, but that's it. No, no other mode of explaining it. No special way of conceiving something that seems to be so important. Morning is just like breathing, then. Is that a more correct way of doing that? And yeah, to some level, in some area of the discussion, it does gain validity when we say, yeah, it is important to be capable of recognizing that it possesses in itself some degree of importance. We cannot just say, oh yeah, I am mourning my whole life, every single day. It's partially meaningless. Once again, the funny thing is, what is mourning? My way of doing that is very tied to the way in which I was raised, the way in which I was socialized, the way in which I found it to work the best for me, the way in which I have seen it was accepted. And that all of that is still subjective. I can pick up somebody from the complete opposite end of the world, and I might find out that actually they are not as similar as me. They are not as exactly. If I have to classify them, maybe they are not mourning the way in which I do, and more so, this funny discussion comes of, or is brought forward about, are they actually mourning at all? You're not doing it in the way in which I am. Are you doing it at all? Are we not borrowing words here? Are we not saying that you are doing something and I am doing the same thing when we both are not at all doing one similar action? What's the point of having so many words that seem to mean so much to us if, when it comes down to the integrity of processing the rest of the world, we found out that, yeah, yeah, you know what? Yeah, we all here are mourning. We all here are dealing with reality or with things. Maybe, but at the same time, maybe they are not following the same path as us, and that is already not a good sensation, not a good feeling, not a good thing, not a good anything. So that becomes a problem. But yeah, the point is, let me try to go exactly back to where we actually should be going, not so much being lost in just saying, yeah, yeah, morning comprised of what is and what is not, what might not be, what is not ought to be, what it should actually be and what not. in the bigger scheme of things, mourning is just a part of life. And the reality is, in the modern world, we like to make it look like, once again, anything is mourning. Not because anything isn't mourning. To some degree, yeah. Even kids mourn, even babies, even newborns are capable of mourning things. The way in which, I don't know, you know what is mourning? You want a very weird example? The days in which somebody who cannot afford food has to go to sleep is mourning. That is in itself a good mechanism to avoid or to confront a sensation, a displeasant sensation. It's a much more abstract concept than what we can actually identify. We have it like such a very narrow definition in many cases. Oh yeah, no, 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 no. You are not mourning because you can only mourn the loss of somebody, of something that you truly appreciate, of things that truly matter to you, of things that truly played a big role in your existence. Therefore, you are not in that realm. You are misusing my special word, and you are misusing my special category when you talk about this stuff. That's the wonderful thing about the society in which we live. In many cases, that's what happens. In many cases, that's the normality. That's about, yeah. Here we are, only getting to mourn things that matter. Everything else is just the constant action of life, the constant part of being that comes with the necessity to think about it. You are not mourning, you're just pondering, let's say. You're not mourning, you're just lost in your own thoughts about things that seem to matter to you. You are never mourning, you're just in a state of entertainment with these fleeting sensations or brief entertainments of other sorts. Only that is mourning, and everything else is not. But in itself, society is not always right, sadly. It would be incredibly funny if it was true that society is always right, but sadly, in this case, no. In some cases, it's necessary to actually delimitate where does the influence of society start and end, and actually where our own will comes into play. Because in this case, yeah, the point that I was trying to construct goes more than anything else towards that side of. And you know something funny? We hear so much talk. We are such participants in all of these discussions about mourning that at a moment, at some point in time, it becomes a mythified event, a not so real thing. Only those who are, what I said before, only those who are very ill mourn. Only those who are very destroyed find themselves mourning stuff. And thus, by performing actions of that sort, we slowly close the doors to something that should be part of everyone's life. Once again, it's just, in its most basic conception, it's just processing the world. thinking about it, feeling it, and being capable of continuing despite the sensations that the world shows us. Yet, when we stand in the place of somebody who has to think about mourning, it becomes this melodramatic action, very complicated and negative and dark action to perform. This highly limited action that only harm can bring, or that might be only capable of getting us in contact with a darker, more negative side of our own life. That's what mourning is. Then everything else that might be positive is something else. It cannot be mourning for us. And by slowly, it sort of feels like an unavoidable gotcha moment, of wow, yeah, what a well constructed argument. I cannot believe it. You just were saying all of this stuff to utilize this allegory. Is it all that we were doing for just one bit? But no, it actually feels like we mold the process of mourning itself in a way in which we transform its actual importance in our life to make it become a much lesser action, a negative action to perform, or at best, something that we are required to do, but which we cannot enjoy at all. And it's fun to see that, yeah, we make concessions, we slowly accept and we slowly settle down on definitions for things of that sort, and we're not actually going anywhere with that. We are just fulfilling what, to some degree, we hear from the outside. We don't actually have to worry so much about things if we take the expressions, the opinions of someone else. We don't have to lose so much of our own time in the act of trying to identify what is it that we actually care about. We don't need to do that. It stops being something important. And slowly, through those similar modes of making concessions about many other things, we end up finding out that actually what is in itself funny is you can either mourn or not things. You can, in a more proper expression, you can say that you have mourned it consciously, unconsciously. You have not mourned it consciously and unconsciously also. All of those things can be done either consciously or unconsciously. So just in that differentiation, we'll already have enough levels of freedom that we can find ourselves having a lot more wiggle room, so to speak. And this is interesting in itself because, wow, you know, we can mourn things even without trying to do so. Or, continuing with the sample of, we slowly make it look like the action of mourning is bad. Thus, we close off from mourning anything. And that's one of the most mysterious non-declarations that psychology offers is the person who cannot mourn things is going to find themselves in pain. Yeah, unavoidably. In the act of mourning, you are also going to identify some pains or sources of stress, some things that might cause more issues also. But it's in itself trying to mourn that we can also find some very liberating things. And I don't know, it's the point itself is trying to trace back the origin of the idea. Because the world that we live in presents us with the possibility of not doing something that should otherwise be classified as a positive action in anyone's life. We can end up in a more modern life in which the action itself, which could liberate us from the suffering, gets called bad, and all the other things that are also as bad gets never properly identified as such, because that will require us to be doing something that we already know seems to be categorically wrong to do. So there is, if you have read, I guess, anything, or if you haven't, probably he seems to have become very important in the current societies for some reason. What he said resonated with many people. There is this author called Byul Chung Han, I think it is, and one of the funny things that he talks about is wow, and you know what also, in a world in which everyone is tired, in which nobody is capable of saying that they are tired, but everyone is slowly dying out of tiredness. What we see around us is people losing faith in the rest of humanity, losing their smiles, losing almost everything without having the possibility of at all expressing that they are going through bad things. Why? The root, the theory that I am presenting is yeah, because here we have it. We cannot talk about it. We cannot make sense out of it. We cannot try to be specific about it. It's not a necessity to say anything about mourning. So we can do everything else that seems to be far more productive. And we cannot. I think the expression is romanticize mourning, romanticize loss, romanticize our feelings. The modern world that allows to conceptually incline towards wrongdoing or actions, that is, to romanticize things, once again allows us to find ourselves lost in this angle of wow, yeah, you know, I cannot mourn things. Why? Because I'm just making it look like it's good to suffer, making it look like it's good to be in contact with my sensations and feelings and emotions. Who the fuck needs that? I'm just being a stupid, emotionally driven person instead of doing anything else. There is this, let's say like this, modernity has created another claim that is very funny. The emotions that we have don't matter at all, or almost at all. We have them and we don't have an obligation to pay attention to them. So we found ourselves talking about all of this other stuff without having to consider the emotional side. It's not a necessity to do so, it's not a requirement of existence, it's just another piece of the puzzle that otherwise could make us feel good, but in this present life, I think it has already shown to not be truly a useful thing to do. To keep on avoiding. I don't think it is that crazy to say, yeah, mourning is a necessity for every human being. To keep avoiding that vital part of our life is to just keep on damaging ourselves. But to state that is to go against everything else that we also have already accepted as good. And that's in itself an entire mourning process. The issue of having to come and face the realization of, wow, you know what? This place in which I am living is utterly garbage, brother. These things that I am doing are not helping me at all. This previous mode of thinking was not benefiting me and my goals. And that is yet another just simple part of the action of mourning. But I think it's still, nonetheless, it's, I don't know, I haven't truly so far identified where was it that it came from, this certain mode of referring to emotions as the worst thing that we could have. So, because we can see emotions as something bad, because not being cold is being far more stupid than to be somebody lacking, we see that, yeah, something funny also happens. And that is most probably we cannot actually live a life in which we even know what makes us feel good. Because trying to understand what makes us feel good is already seen as something bad. And any emotion of that sort, even if it is already something good, even if it is the ideal, wow, yeah, happiness. Happiness is, you know what, you shouldn't be pursuing happiness, but you should try to have happiness in your life, even if you're not pursuing it, because an unhappy life is a sad life, and nobody wants to have a sad life, right, Simi? Okay, then you try to pursue happiness, and you find yourself to the reality of, wow, I have never before asked myself, what the fuck is happiness? And am I going to try to define it by myself? Am I going to depart from what the rest of the world tells me is good? Or can I actually just stay in my hole and not have to talk out all of this anymore? It could be much better if I didn't try at all, and it could be much better if I didn't worry myself with all of those other things at all. But I can also leave or just try, see what happens if I try and find out. Maybe because That's the problem. The world likes to make it look like it matters way too much if we are or not following the trends and whatnot. The moment in which the person is confronted by just themselves and not much else, which is, I don't know, even if you try your best 50% of the time, even if you try to have everything else already full of other people, you still have to sit with your own self for 50% of your own life. Even if you don't want to do that, you have to still find yourself existing in your own dreams, find yourself being in those moments in which you are waiting for everyone else. And all of that is a weight that makes it hard to actually compare us honestly with or ideal image of this process. Once we identify that mourning is bad as the truth, so it becomes slowly an action that takes far more will than what we can actually have sometimes, but it is still performable, doable, actionable. And even if it can be damaging, it is also part of trying that reveals how much. While having tried and having failed had consequences, the step of not having tried at all was still a far much worse consequence in itself than anything else. And I will not have that if I can choose. I will avoid pain if I was me, just as I am right now. So, we find ourselves discussing and we find ourselves dealing with that reality. Not because it is an obligation, not that we actually have to mourn everything. We can. Nothing actually stops the mind from working, but slowly to integrate it into the ways in which we already exist, that might be good enough already. That might be at least a step in the right direction, if nothing else. But yeah, it's as always, no? With the allegory of step in the right direction. And even then, just that first step requires so much that what we have sometimes that it's understandable that we are still incapable of taking. But as always, my personal favorite counter argument is but one day things finally change. One day it becomes unbearable enough. And it's necessary to do something in order to not having such a horrible existence. Then we can slowly work on a proper way of talking out of that. But yeah, that is, I guess that is what I had to say about morning. What took us like 1 hour and 20 minutes to talk about. And I don't know. I guess it's always useful to also, in in the discursiveness of a human being, you know what is also good? be capable of expressing your own self, not just, oh yeah, you know what, we have to be rocket scientists. Do I actually know anything about rockets? Do I have any time spent on that? Or am I just making stuff up without actually allowing anything else to be? Okay, I can say, yeah, I find it, in my opinion, in my case, to be very possible to mourn quite a lot. Once again, sadly, it's not in accordance with what the common definition is. I don't think that mourning needs to be such a negative thing, but that's an inner process, not the normal definition is utterly different. The normal viewpoint is utterly distant from that. And we can create that. Let me say like this. This is an important point also. The human finds out that when they are actually forced to live so much with themselves, what is required to keep on surviving gets much more importance than what the whole of society can declare as good or bad. In some cases, even if the whole world says that mourning is not the best thing to do, we can stop being so fucking bothered by everything else. Once we do that wonderful action of, wow, I'm going to try and feel better. I might be honest enough to say, you know what, if I don't get to mourn, I'm going to feel like shit. Can you allow me that? Maybe it will make me not feel as good anyways, but it is still much better than to feel like absolutely shit and not have anything else. I am in a rank of 1 to 10, 10 being the worst. I am at 200 nowadays. Maybe with mourning, with such a bad thing, I can go from 200 to just 50. And yeah, I am still doing bad, very, very bad, but I am somehow doing better than if I do nothing at all, and I remain in the same position as before. That's when society stops being so important. When we can realize that actually what we say also makes changes in the rest of society. It's this lack of awareness about how it's not important, valuable we all get to be, and how seriously we can be taken once we try to be honest about the things that we do, you know? Or even if we are not honest, just capable enough of expressing something that works in our favor. It doesn't even require to be the most honest statement to work in our favor, yes. But yeah, that is that is all that I have to say about Mourning. I don't know. That was so far only one of the things that I had to say. Uh, I am. Yes, we still have one more actually. We still have this other. I have said before. I am trying to slowly fix something that was to create completely unrelated titles that don't have anything to do with the stream. You know, this whole idea of being misleading for the sake of being misleading, which in the end doesn't bring any kind of true benefit to us. Not because it isn't funny, it might be the funniest thing to actually be misleading, but sometimes funny is not actually useful. Fun is not all that capable of changing the world. What might be fun might not be truly all that impactful, let's say. That's a more proper statement. But yeah, the other thing then, if we understand what I'm trying to say, is this other idea of hypothesis. That's a little bit more complicated. I tried to talk about it also. I'm somebody very recursive with what I say, and I have accepted that, but sorry for that anyways. It's not like I can't recognize that, yeah. I tend to have my repetitiveness with me always. But let's still try our best. Just, I guess, give me a minute or so. I hope. Yeah, the audio seems to not have changed, so we are fine. But, anyways, the other thing which is left to talk about is, as I said, hypothesis. It's a little bit more complicated. I don't think it's all that impossible to follow. It's if the previous idea was understood, then this one is very easy to see, connect with that. Why? Because there is something funny that always happens in any human being actually, but we can say only in a handful if we want to avoid feeling so subjected to wow, the whole universe has to go through that. No way. So there is this thing of confronting the sensations that we have, confronting things that happen in life. And something funny that happens in that is have to create hypotheses at some point for why things are happening. We have to. There is this concept called reality testing. It is in some cases utilized for a very different terminology type of example of, oh yeah, we may not be living in the actual reality, so you have to reality test as much as you can in order to make sure that you are not, I don't know, living in a dream, for example. Yeah, we can acknowledge that that does exist. I am not referring to that. I'm not at all referring to that in itself particularly. Why? Because what matters is wholly different. When we when we try to find out what the world that we have around us is, we see something very funny also happen. That is, we have all of those other things in our life, besides the thing that we can say are good and bad, that we don't actually care about that much. And once we have to create a coherent enough worldview, we start to try to integrate as many things as we are capable, either from both sides, what is good and what is bad, or from even all, as in the three sides, also what doesn't truly matter all that much. And why is this the point in itself? Because something funny happens when we do that, and that is in the etymology of the word itself, hypothesis, we find something. We are just making hypothetical explanations for the world. We might not be fully sure if what we are saying, if where we are going with our ideas is the right path. So we have to hypothesize, we have to assume things, and we have to take many risks in what we are going to be saying and doing. And once again, this concept of reality testing comes forward. Why? Because we have to test with reality if what we are thinking, if where we are going, if what we are talking about matters or not. And what becomes incredibly funny after that is that also we realize that besides just or utterly empty or utterly simplistic mode of seeing the world, there are others that could work better for us. This idea of every human being has to commit some errors before finding out what actually works for them. This idea, in this context, is transformed into wow, yeah. And you know what's funny? We have to actually try to see, try to find out, try to discuss about how here, how all of these things that seem to always, almost always require all of our attention in order to be capable of identifying what is it actually that we are trying to do with all of that. Otherwise, it becomes a problem. Otherwise, it needs to be transformed into a new hypothesis that can actually explain things. But I don't think it happens without a process of mourning. You cannot make sense out of the world if you don't at all allow yourself to feel it. Even if you say that you are not going to feel it, there is this funny reality of okay, all the sensations are going to happen in different layers of your existence. Maybe you're not going to allow yourself to emotionally feel it. Maybe your body is going to start showing you that you are feeling stuff. Maybe you're not going to allow yourself to let it affect your daily life. Maybe your dreams are going to show you that you are starting to feel it. Maybe your ideas and thoughts are going to slowly change in order to try to highlight to you that, yeah, things are being in any way felt in some way, assuming that we don't even know which one. It's all about trying to make sense out of the world in itself. It doesn't happen naturally, it doesn't happen easily, but it can always happen. And once the human understands that, yeah, we are required to keep on evolving the ways in which we see stuff, we can do so more rapidly. It's just like with mourning and how it is useful to be capable of seeing, saying that, yeah, we have actually mourned about all of these things and nothing else. Okay. What happens also with the things that we haven't? Do they not matter at all? Do they matter but in a different level? Do we need to mourn them differently? All of that comes also into play, and if we have to be honest, The question then becomes, wow, can I truly decide on all of these things? Can I make a proper decision that makes me feel good? In many cases, it's always a sacrifice, and it is in those instances that also the possibility for a realization comes forward once again. I will say, I will go as far as to say that, yeah, it's a repeating pattern that many people get to find themselves always having possible breakthroughs that they might never take on because what I said before, you cannot identify some issues because doing so would mean that you have also identified some actually not so useful things that you invested so much in, you know, that is tiresome, but it is still performable. If nothing else, it is still performable. The capacity for the human being to perform things is quite surprising, I must say. But that is good. We cannot actually get angry so much about all of that. It doesn't matter to do that. If we do that or not, nothing actually changes in that particular area. We can try to say that, yeah, I'm not going to mourn anything. We can try to say that our actual hypothesis about the world is the best one. But as always, reality is quite a sketchy thing, quite a funny thing. Once we are confronted by it, once we have to deal with it, we find out many things that we have never expected before, that no human mind could ever expect to begin with. So, that's also what makes life so fun. But yeah, yes, I guess that was the whole point. Now, I think I have that much more to say. I don't know. I think that was now truly everything for today. Don't even know how much, but enough time to say that, yeah, we got to talk about things. Maybe not even if fully, probably many of these things will require many, many more hours than what we did just now to get fully talked about, but at least some of the most important parts of the concepts were mentioned. Some, as always, some extra pieces of the puzzle get added so that slowly, if we are willing to take them, it becomes easier to finish it, to understand where everything else also goes. But yeah, I guess that will be it for today. Thanks for being here, I guess. As I said, no, I actually didn't say anything. But yeah, today we didn't have any bar. So this is all that I can offer instead of that. Thank you for being here. It was a pleasure. And yeah, I don't know. I guess tomorrow I should actually stream, so we will see what happens tomorrow. But don't hope on anything. Anyways, the real point is how a good day, a good night, a good life, a chill life. I guess yeah, part of the message is also mourn stuff. It's actually good. That's my personal viewpoint. It actually is necessary and good. So yeah, thanks as always. Thanks to Sheen, thanks to Andy. It was a very good day.